Hi, my name is James. I'm a knee, foot and ankle specialist and I've been providing advice to patients for over 10 years on footwear. Today I'm going to talk you through the best waterproof walking shoes. We've selected 3 completely different types of shoes so that you can get a better idea of what type of footwear might work best for you, depending on the type of terrain that you're walking on, the conditions underfoot, whether you need a stable or neutral shoe, and the different features in each shoe that influence how you feel as you stand in them or as you walk in them, whether you're going uphill or downhill. So the first shoe we're going to talk about is the New Balance 880 V14 GTX. It's the lightest of the 3 shoes, coming in about 247 grams for a men's size 9 US. Got 31mm of cushioning in the rear foot, 23mm of cushioning in the forefoot, giving an 8mm difference from the back to the front of the shoe. So it sits just on the side of classification of a higher drop shoe. So when you think of a higher drop, the bigger the angle at the back, it tends to offload your Achilles and is helpful for reducing Achilles tendonitis pain. Then in terms of the cushioning, it's got New Balance's Fresh Foam X cushioning. So it's a relatively balanced cushioning, so there's a little bit of squish to it. You sink into it a little bit as you enter the heel strike. So it's really nice and soft, not completely cloud-like, but it is nice and padded. And then it has a nice transition through onto the forefoot. You got plenty of cushioning underneath there, so if you got any issues with metatarsalgia, Morton's neuroma, you don't need to worry about that. Then in terms of the geometry and how the shoe feels on your foot, it's got a nice posterior lateral heel bevel on the back, and that's just a little bit of a tilt to add extra bit of control as you strike the ground. Then as you transition through to the forefoot, it's got an early stage rocker, so you can see the shoe starts to curve upwards, and that just helps with the propulsion phase of the gait cycle, so helps you with the push off phase of the gait cycle. Then underneath the shoe, it's got mild lugs underneath, so you can see these little pods that sit on the shoe, and that means that it's good for wet terrain. Obviously it gives you grip, but you can also use it on mild trails and on grassy routes, so it'll still give you that extra little bit of stability, no slippage. Then in terms of how the shoe gives you stability, so overall it's what we classify as a stable neutral shoe. So it's a neutral shoe in terms of the bed is relatively flat. It has some stability elements to it. So one is the sidewalls that are built up on the heel, and they come up on the inside and on the outside of the shoe, help cradle your heel and stop it from moving side to side. So if you're on slippier terrain or if you're coming down a hill, your foot doesn't slide on top of the bed. It's got a nice broad base of support underneath your forefoot, and it doesn't narrow too much in the midsole. That just increases the amount of contact that you have with the ground, again adding extra stability. And it's got some sole flare in the forefoot, so you can see how the sole comes out slightly wider than where your foot sits in the bed. Again, this is an extra added element of stability. So it's a neutral but has elements of stability to it to keep you stable underfoot on wet surfaces. Then as we move into the upper part, it's got an engineered mesh on top. It's got a true to size fit, but it does taper quickly in the toe box, so as you can see it just narrows quickly as it comes up towards your big toe. It does come in a normal and a wide version, so those of you that may struggle with toe issues or forefoot issues, you might want to opt for the wider fit. Otherwise the length we found was normal. It's got a gusseted tongue, so that means that the tongue is stitched into the shoe so it doesn't slip from side to side. It's got a nice lockdown with the laces. It's got mild to minimal padding around the heel cup, and it's got a moderately stiff heel counter. Again, the stiffer the heel counter is, it adds extra elements of stability to the shoe. So this is what we call mild to moderate, so it's more helpful if you've got conditions like Haglund's deformity on the back of your heel. It will enjoy if it's not as stiff, so it doesn't put as much pressure on the back of the ankle. Overall, this is an excellent stable neutral shoe for day-to-day use, standing your feet all day, going for long walks, and as I said, it can be used for grassy trails or for mild trails. A little bit of lugs give you extra traction. Then in contrast to that, we have the Asics GT-2000 version 12 in GTX. So this is Asics' moderate stability shoe, so it has more stability elements which we'll touch on than what you see in the New Balance, but it's a day-to-day walking shoe for standing on all day. So then in terms of the cushioning in the shoe, you've got 34.5mm of cushioning in the rear foot, 26.5mm of cushioning in the forefoot, giving you an 8mm drop as well, so similar to what you get in a New Balance. It is a little bit heavier, coming in at 266 grams for men's size 9 US. The reason that it's typically heavier is that it's got extra added elements of stability. So it's got Asics' 3D guidance system for stability, and in terms of the cushioning, it's got pure gel inside, so that's between where your foot sits and the cushioning underneath. That's just to add extra elements of comfort as you make contact with the ground. And it's got the FF Blast cushioning, which is synonymous with Asics range. So it's nice and soft underneath. It's a little bit snappier of a shoe than what you get in the New Balance. So as you apply weight to it, it tends to give you a bit more of a pushback, so it's a bit more responsive, a bit more energy return. So those of you that like walking faster, that are not too fussed about having a super soft, comfortable shoe, this can be an excellent shoe for you. It provides stability in some similar ways to what you get in the Gore-Tex. It has a nice wide base of support underneath the shoe. It doesn't narrow too much under the midsole, increasing your base of contact with the ground. Then it has much wider sole flare in the forefoot than what you get in a New Balance, so you can see it comes out considerably wider than where your foot sits in the shoe, so that adds that extra element of stability. It has larger sidewalls on the outside and the inside of the shoe, and they're slightly later, so they're, rather than being right on the heel, they sit between the heel and the midfoot, trying to control them pronation forces in your foot. They don't have that traditional medial post underneath the shoe that you'd see in the Kayano, but overall the 3D guidance system does an excellent job of keeping your foot centered in the shoe. Underneath, you've got the AHAR rubber sole, so it's got some pods as well underneath, not as many as what you see in the New Balance, but we found the traction to be really good. So again, good for wet and slippy terrain, good for mild trails, but not able to handle anything more technical than that. Then as we move into the upper, you've got the Gore-Tex layer on top. We found that you've plenty of space on top. You've got a true to size fit, however Asics fit are a little bit different, so like a 9 UK is a slightly different size in a US and a slightly different size in the EU, so you just need to double check that your sizing is right before you pick them up. Otherwise, it comes in a normal fit and a wide fit. In normal fit, we had plenty of space in there, no problems with that, whereas in some shoes like the Hoka, we often have to get a size up, so no issues there, and then the length is not a problem. It's got a gusseted tongue as well. It's a bit padded on the tongue, so it's there for comfort. Got nice padded laces on top as well. It locks down well. It's got more stability in the heel cup than what you get in the New Balance. Again, just adding to that more moderate stability shoe, so it helps us keep your foot and heel nice and stable as you initiate contact with the ground. And it's got really nice geometry in the shoe, so you initiate heel contact and you transition through into push off really smoothly, really nicely. And in fact, it's probably a preferred model than the newer model that's out, the version 13 in the non-Gore-Tex. They've done a really good job with the version 12, both in Gore-Tex and non-Gore-Tex. So overall, this is a slightly heavier shoe, no problem with the sizing. More if you need some more stability, it's a better option than the New Balance. So if you have issues with plantar fasciitis, posterior tibial tendonitis, this is a shoe that will help more with those sort of conditions. If you struggle to control pronation moments, so moving inward, again, this is a shoe that's going to give you more stability. Then a completely contrasting shoe to the other two is the Hoka Speedgoat 6. Now this is a road to trail shoe, so that means that you can use it for walking daily, but it can also be used on all different types of terrain, both mild, moderate and very technical terrains. And part of the reason is that it's got 5mm lugs underneath the shoe. So it's also got Vibram's Mega Grip outsole, so it's a really sticky sole, so especially when the surface is wet, it gives you loads and loads of grip. So it's a really good shoe for using on the road, but also on the trails. The downside of using it on the road all the time is that you're likely to wear down the lugs quite quickly, so you may not notice it underfoot, but it will mean that if you wear them down quickly and you go onto a trail, it won't give you as much stability as it would do if you use it on mixed terrain most of the time. Then in terms of the cushioning, it's got 40mm of cushion in the rear foot, 35mm of cushion in the forefoot, giving it the most amount of cushioning out of all three shoes. It uses Hoka's classic CM EVA cushioning, so it's quite a balanced cushioning, so it sits somewhere in the middle of the two of them, so not quite snappy, but you don't sink into the shoe as much as you do in the New Balance. Some of the things to keep in mind with a high stack shoe is it may not be as stable as what you get in a lower stack shoe. So having more cushioning typically means that your stabilizer muscles have to work harder to keep you centered in the shoe as you move. So typically your peroneal muscles and your posterior tibial muscle have to work really hard to keep your ankle nice and stable. They try and counteract having this high stack by having some big sidewalls, especially on the inner aspect of the shoe, and they've got a smaller sidewall in the forefoot as well, so just an added extra element of stability. They have some mild sole flare in the shoe, probably similar to what you get in the New Balance, but not as much as what you get in the Asics, and the shoe doesn't narrow too much in the midfoot, so they try to keep that broad base of support throughout. Then moving to the upper, they've got some overlay on the top of the shoe. That just helps to protect it when you're rubbing off debris or stones or rocks. It's not too firm on top, so it doesn't give you too much protection around your toes. One of the big downsides of Hoka shoes is that it's really tapered in the forefoot, so it narrows quite quickly. So if you've got a wider foot, you might find it a little bit too tight in the normal, and we definitely recommend getting the wider size. No problems in terms of the length, but just something to really take note of, that it does taper a little bit. Even if it stretches, it's still quite tight for a normal fit. It's got an engineered mesh on top with the Gore-Tex layer underneath to keep it waterproof, and then you've got a super thin tongue on top, so much thinner than what you get in the New Balance and in the Asics. And that's another thing just to take note of. If you have any history of problems at the front of your ankle, so like stuff like an anterior ankle impingement, when you lock down the laces, if you're doing a lot of downhill walking, you might find it a little bit uncomfortable on the front of your shoe. Otherwise, it's got a nice moderately stable heel counter at the back of the shoe, and it comes up nice and high, and it's nice and padded, so relatively comfortable. So this is a really good shoe. I know I've talked a little bit about the toe box and about the laces on the front and the thin tongue, but overall it's just a super comfortable shoe. It's a really durable shoe. You know, it's really versatile. You can take on all sorts of terrain. If in the winter you tend to walk on grass in farms or in alpine up on the mountains, this can handle all of that. It can also handle day-to-day walking on the road, gravel paths, any sort of wet surfaces underneath. This is the most stable of the three shoes, also being waterproof like all three. So overall, you have three completely different types of shoes. The New Balance is super cushioned, really comfortable, a bit like walking on a cloud, has some stability elements to it, but is a classic neutral shoe. A little bit heavier in the Asics GT-2000 version 12, gives you more stability as a result, and it can be used on mild trails, but mostly for normal day-to-day cement, tarmac and gravel. And then in the Hoka Speedgoat 6, you have an all-rounder that can cover all types of terrain, all different types of surfaces, whether they're wet or dry or slippery. It's got a little bit of a tapered toe box. It's got a balanced cushioning, so it sits somewhere in the middle of all three, and really is an excellent shoe if you want to go off-road and you're looking for something that's waterproof. If you've got any questions on all three shoes, please leave them in the comment section below. We've links to all three shoes in the description. We also have loads of videos on different types of shoes and comparisons in all three New Balance, Hoka and Asics ranges. Also check out our website if you want more detailed analysis of each type of shoe. If you found the video helpful, it's really useful for the channel if you can like and subscribe. It makes a big difference to us, even if you decide not to buy the shoes through the links. Just liking it and sharing it or subscribing to the channel makes a huge difference. We buy everything independently, so it really helps support the channel.